Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inside Florida Politics podcast powered by the USA Today Florida Network. Tallahassee, the state, and the nation were stunned by the news and riveted to coverage of a deadly, tragic shooting at Florida State University. The Florida legislature will soon be wrapping up its annual session, or maybe not exactly finishing up on time. And the global impact of the death of Pope Francis is also reverberating across the Sunshine State. These are the three stories I'll be discussing with my USA Today Florida Network colleagues, James Call and John Kennedy. Thanks for joining us, James. Good to have you, and we'll go ahead and start with you. It's been a week since gunshots were fired at the FSU Student Union. We know two people were killed, including, believe it or not, the son of a colorful anti-Castro Cuban militant and CIA source who himself was gunned down in a bar more than 40 years ago. So, James, fill us in on what we know about the shooter and what the mood is on campus, especially at a time when students generally are focusing on final exams and getting prepped for the joyful graduations of the class of 2025. So, what's going on?
Well, as of Wednesday evening, the 20-year-old student who investigators have identified as the suspect remains hospitalized in good condition. Officials say that Phoenix Eichner will not be, charges won't be filed against him until he's released from the hospital. The students at the Tallahassee State College who were members of a political club with Eichner, said that he espoused white supremacist views, which caused them to kick him out of the political club. Their only rule was no Nazis, and they said Eichner had forced them to exercise it. Mr. Eichner had been involved in training programs at the sheriff's office and was a member of its youth advisory committee. Sheriff Walter McNeil has told reporters that he was steeped in Leon County's sheriff's office family. The mood on campus is there's a contrast. You have students posing for graduation photos at the Westcott Fountain, iconic gathering spot on the campus. And also that was where they launched a mile-long march onto the state capitol yesterday, Wednesday. The students are angry. They say they are angry. They are frustrated that they have been participating in lockdowns and shooters drills since they were in elementary school, and enough is enough. They want to hold the legislature accountable for pro-gun policies that makes such mass shootings possible. And they released a 5-point plan that includes safe storage laws, mental health interventions, which in both cases are present in this case with the FSU mass shooting. And they want to talk to lawmakers about gun policy.
But James, what we've been hearing all along is there actually was an effort to roll back some of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas post the high school shooting from 7 years ago, roll back some of those measures, including the age to buy a weapon. What's going on? Because it looked like up to this point, the legislature and the students were going in opposite directions. Is there a middle ground here, or what do you think happens with lawmakers with only a few weeks left here?
Well, there's not much time left in the legislative session, and most of the time that is left will be taken up by the budget. But what you mentioned is very interesting because take Senator Tina Polsky from Boca Raton. For the past 7 years, she has filed 5 different bills mandating safer storage laws, stricter background checks, mental health intervention, Jamie's Law, which is named after one of the Parkland victims. And her measures don't even get a hearing. At the same time this year, these students, some of the students who are marching and some of the students who actually huddled in classrooms at FSU last week, have testified for bills to lower the age restriction that was passed after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high school shooting, and against a tax cut. The Senate has actually advanced a bill for a 4-month-long sales tax holiday on firearms and ammunitions. These students, they testified against those measures, and they say they felt patronized. So it's going to be interesting to see if those two bills, repealing the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas era age restriction on rifles and long guns, and whether that sales tax holiday does go through to the governor's office, and whether they will reach into the committees and pull up some of these bills that have been filed by Tina Polsky, Senator Polsky, and Representative Christine I always have trouble with her name, Hunchofsky, who was the mayor of Parkland when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting took place. They can't get a hearing.
Yeah, James. So we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that the expectation is that the legislature may go into overtime here. If they got extra time, would that time work in favor of what the students are asking for, or against them by giving more time to some of these measures to roll back gun safety measures?
I have to rely on John Kennedy for a little bit of help here, but I'm sure, because I'm not as familiar with the parliamentary rules, but I am sure that there are ways for the Appropriation Committee that they can find a nexus, for a committee to find a nexus to pull up a bill that has been filed. As long as the lawmakers are meeting in Tallahassee, almost anything is possible. You can always find a maneuver to keep for a bill to be resurrected, right, John? Don't you think so?
So, John, what do you think? What are your thoughts, John, on this?
Well, yeah, I mean that is true. That if they did go into overtime session or into a special session, they could add things to the agenda of those overtime sessions. But I have a feeling, just on this issue of guns, having seen this through the years, I have a feeling that the legislature will tap the brakes on any pro-gun legislation, whether it be allowing people under the age of 21 to suddenly buy AR-15s again, because that's what that long gun ban prohibits right now. I have a feeling that that's not going to advance anymore. And similarly, that tax break holiday on ammunition spanning hunting season, I don't know. There's a lot of things in the air right now regarding where the tax breaks go, along with the budget.
All right, well, let's get to that then. Speaking of the Florida legislature, last time we talked on the last show, the 60-day gathering, you mentioned it was somewhat dysfunctional. All right, we're running out of time here. Are we still looking at a special session to resolve the budget and these tax breaks and more?
Yeah. I think the dysfunction is reigning supreme right now. We're recording this as the session still has about a week before its scheduled adjournment, but extra time right now is looking like it's going to be needed. Without getting too deep in the legislative weeds, budget negotiations between the House and Senate really haven't gotten off the ground. They should have, about 2 weeks ago. The House and Senate are $4.4 billion apart in their budget proposals. So, that means there's a lot to settle. But, even when the budget divides are less, the House and Senate usually need several days of, and usually a couple of weekends of committee meetings and horse trading to finalize the budget. And this year, we're clearly running out of the clock. So there's that. And then, as we mentioned a moment ago, there's the tax cuts, which both sides want, even though the national economy right now is suggesting that it's not a good time to give away tax collections, which fund a state budget and, all its many needs, from schools to roads to healthcare services. But, if Americans are worried about their 401ks, if they suddenly now stop traveling to Florida and home sales get even slower, Florida's tax receipts are going to slump soon. But so far, both Senate President Ben Albritton and Speaker Daniel Perez, they want to give away anywhere from $2 to $5 billion worth of tax cuts. So that's another big ticket item that needs agreement and further discussion. And that's where we were talking a moment ago. The ammunition sales tax holiday is part of the House plan. So whether that advances is a question mark. And then, hovering over all this is Governor Ron DeSantis. He's been.
Let's talk a little bit about the governor here, John, because usually, we talk about legislative losers after the governor has his turkey shoot, meaning after he either vetoes legislation or he accesses budget spending items out of the budget. This year, it's Governor Ron DeSantis who's racked up some L's even before the session ends. So tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, much of what DeSantis wanted coming into this session, hasn't happened. It's looking like whatever the outcome of the budget, that DeSantis won't get the funding levels that he wanted for transportation, the environment, and other infrastructure that he has been able to, kind of command and dole out through his years as governor. And along with First Lady Casey DeSantis's Hope Florida, which is on the hot seat for $10 million it received from a Medicaid settlement, possibly illegal, according to House members. DeSantis also has been slapped by the legislature in a number of areas, setbacks that he has not seen before in his 6 years as governor. So far, we've seen university boards and agency appointees that he's made. They've either been rejected or held up by the state Senate. And a bill that he opposes that would open up the now secretive university president selection process, that looks like it's going to pass, and DeSantis is opposed to it. He talked a long time about doing something to help condo residents hurt by new laws that require inspections and funding of maintenance reserves. These all followed the Surfside condo collapse. But with the clock winding down now on the session, there's only glimmers of agreement between the House and Senate on what to do. Basically, I could go on, but the bottom line is DeSantis is learning that as a lame duck governor, he's lost whatever hold he had over fellow Republicans in the legislature. And, we saw the beginnings of this Republican revolution in January when the House and Senate pushed back against the governor on the immigration changes that he wanted in anticipation of President Trump's deportation efforts. But, it's only gotten worse as far as the relationship between the governor and especially the House. Yep. So, much has been said about DeSantis's lack of friends, his struggle with human interactions. Trump was able to roast him throughout their short-lived, mano a mano battle for the Republican presidential nomination. Well, now he's finding out, what happens when you don't build any loyalty or good feelings among fellow legislators.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the Hope Foundation issue, the House taking a look at it, the lawmakers taking a look at it. How far can they really go with this? Because it seems like this is an issue that's really is sticking to the first couple, shall we say?
Yeah, it is, and it kind of emanates a little bit from the possibility that Casey DeSantis, the First Lady, could be running for governor next year. This Hope Florida debacle is certainly going to tar her anything like a legacy she has. But yeah, it's hard to say right now where Hope Florida goes. Again, with the legislature nearing the end, that probably means the Hope Foundation investigation by the House also is nearing its end. But I think the House is hoping that possibly a state attorney, that, an investigation could be opened into what they believe to be is a misuse of state and federal Medicaid dollars. This was money that the $10 million came from a Medicaid-related settlement that it was steered to Hope Florida, this $10 million. And then Hope Florida found a way to distribute most of that money to a couple of political committees that the governor was relying on to fight the Amendment 3 marijuana measure that was on the ballot last year. So these political committees that were helping, fund campaigns to fight the ballot measure suddenly were the recipients of it's more than $8 million that came via Hope Florida, which got the money through Medicaid. So anyway, the House is hoping that, I think, that prosecutors will start picking this up. That's another question mark.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens. I don't know if at the state, if on the federal level, the House can issue criminal referrals over to the Department of Justice. I don't know if we have a similar mechanism here in Florida, but we'll see how that all plays out. I don't think we've heard the end of the Hope Florida issue, but
no, I think that's very true.
Yeah. Anyway, wrapping up a momentous week, Pope Francis died April 21st. Now, the axiom is all politics is local. But you can say that about religion too. The pontiff was, for progressives anyway, Catholic and not, a vocal counterbalance on the global stage to President Donald Trump and the worldwide MAGA movement. The Florida church in particular has been outspoken on immigration and defending Catholic relief services and spending by the U.S. Agency for International Development, known as USAID. But wait, there's more. Key Florida bishops and actually the Miami Archbishop are nearing retirement, so the next pope will have to choose their successors and do so fairly soon. That's not an insignificant decision on bully pulpits in the home state of the U.S. President, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the National Security Advisor. John, when a pope passes away, the ensuing conclave usually draws global attention as an event on its own, and maybe this year even more so because of that movie that came close to winning an Oscar. But this time, Florida Catholics, and in fact, a lot of people in Florida, should be paying attention because the state has something at stake in who the new pope will be. Or are we overstating things here?
Well, there's a lot of elements there, obviously. Trump won the Catholic vote in this country in the 2024 election. So a lot of Catholics are aligned with President Trump. And for Florida, the next pope, as you pointed out, will be naming bishops and archbishops across the state, with several of the current prelates ready for retirement, as you pointed out, in the next few years. So that could really have a direct effect on many Florida Catholics in their home communities. And, in a state where immigration is such an issue, the question of whether the next pope follows in sort of the empathetic and the policy statements of Pope Francis, that's going to be a question. Governor Ron DeSantis is a Catholic, not a very public one, but he's been praised and criticized by the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops for his policies. He has regularly ignored their pleas to not enact the death penalty, but they've also liked some of what he's done with kind of parental rights, as it's described, and with the private school movement. So DeSantis also has advanced policies that appeal to cultural conservatives. Many of them are Catholics, but many of these same Catholics are also repulsed by what the governor has done on immigration. Of course, Pope Francis had something of a scolding relationship with President Trump, a Florida man, over his policies, particularly involving the poor and immigrants. And, at this point, who knows how long it's going to take for the white smoke to appear, Antonio?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You mentioned how Catholics did side with Trump in the 2024 election. It was, I think, the exit polls had like 58% to 40% for the vice president at the time. And, that's kind of a factor. You got to imagine in Florida, we probably tracked along those lines. But, one thing to keep in mind, folks, as cardinals gather to elect a new pope, is that all-important Florida will not have a ballot. There are no cardinals from our state, which begs the question, Florida being this political hub of the political universe in the United States and in the world to some extent. And as my colleagues at the Palm Beach Post have noted, we are also a wealth hub. A lot of money is poured into this state. The question is, should we have a cardinal? And I pose that question to Florida theologians and even the Archbishop of Miami. And the answer is that, while the U.S. is still home to just a small fraction of Catholics around the world, and there are many other considerations beyond secular power that go into effect. So we'll have to see what happens going forward. But I think, as I was told, the first thing they got to do is name these new bishops and the Archbishop in Miami, which is the lone archdiocese in the state. So, but anyway, there is plenty of reason to keep, like John said, to keep an eye out for that white smoke in the next few weeks. Well, that concludes our show. I want to thank our production guru, Rob Landers, and all of our colleagues around the USA Today Florida Network for all their great work that informs the issues and the topics and the details that we provide on this podcast. Thanks again, and see you next time.